Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Guyz. It's Wednesday night. It's time for our regular night of mayhem and mischief. We have a special treat for you tonight. We have a disc golf manufacturing company that's made here in America, and they have some great and unique stories, and they're going to explain that. But in the meantime, let's bring in the wonderful and beautiful Shay, and then introduce the wonderful and beautiful Dina. How are you, young ladies?
Fabulous.
Awesome.
And tired.
Let's go Wendell's in the chat. Hello, Wendell. The chat is open. The phone lines are up. It's 1-888-88-YERGZ. I should know this in my sleep by now. Thank you, compliments of Jurg's radio. Well, if you young ladies are ready, let's bring out our guests. We got them hiding backstage for no apparent reason. So
Let's do it.
all right, let's see if I can figure out what to do here. Push a button or something. Well, hello there.
Hi.
Hi, y'all.
Hello.
Welcome. We are glad that you're here. We have not had anybody officially from the disc golf community here. We've had some players, but we've never had anyone that was like official. So welcome. I picked you guys out of a herd of a million. No, because no. Your backstory is it's a company made in America. It's a startup company. You two are kind of like living the American dream. So I want you to tell us first off how in the heck you started with disc golf, and then just tell us about yourself and everything that goes with it.
Well, thanks so much for having us on. We really appreciate it. It's awesome to be here.
Yes.
You want to say your name?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm Austin.
I'm Macy, like the store. Austin, like the city.
Yeah.
Good to meet you all.
Nice to meet y'all too.
And yeah, disc golf. I mean, I got into disc golf first. I've been playing for about 5 years now, and I got into it when Macy and I moved down to San Diego, and shortly after getting married, found this group of guys that invited me out to go play disc golf with them. Like, it was a good way to get to know each other, and I was pretty much hooked since the first time I played it. I liked playing golf growing up, but golf is really expensive and hard and time consuming and it's just difficult to make your sport. And then disc golf the rounds didn't take as long. It was way more affordable. It was, a good activity that you could do with friends or alone. And yeah, so I kind of just went all in to disc golf, and it became kind of my main sport that I did for the last 5 years.
I would also say that we never saw ourselves owning a disc golf company. Elevation just kind of happens through a lot of different circumstances. When we moved to San Diego, I was finishing grad school to be a psychologist, and Austin was a biomedical engineer at a medical manufacturing company, like a big engineering place.
Yeah. I worked for BD first, and then I worked for Abbott until Elevation happened. And yeah, so yeah, basically, I graduated with a biomedical engineering degree. It was very hard to find a job, as it is in the world today.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had finally got a very entry level job while she was in school. We could, at least afford to live. And then I got a job at Abbott, and it was good. It was like a legit job. Like I was a quality engineer for like some of the stent delivery system manufacturing stuff. Um, yeah, it was good and amazing people working there, but I just started to realize like it was not really what I wanted to do with my life.
Not your passion.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. I think that I wanted to do something creative, and I thought engineering would be a good outlet for that.
Hmm.
But at least, especially in medical devices, like obviously everything is super regulated, which is great, but
Right.
also like very boring for me.
Yep.
Not like inventing, you're
Yeah,
engineering. Kind of
Yeah.
it's a little different. So yeah,
There's no room for goofing around and trying
Trying
whatever
new
you
things.
want.
Yeah.
You leave that to me as a paramedic on the street. That's what I do. I'll try to see what happens. So,
yeah.
you know, one thing a lot of people don't realize that the disc is actually a wing, and so your degree in engineering
Hmm.
has to help out because a lot of people that I know that play, well, I won't say a lot, but a lot of people I know that are pilots love disc golf because of the different angles and stuff and different shape of the frisbee, different position of throwing it, and even speed, how it makes such a difference. So it's not like, I don't know, basketball. It's aerodynamic, but not in the same way. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the disc it kind of has like its own personality, and I feel like that's something that a lot of disc golfers could relate to. It's like you have this special connection with your disc because
Hmm.
when you throw it, like every single one, even if it's supposed to be the same, like they all, as soon as you release it, do something completely on their own that like you don't necessarily like you can control it as much as you can while you're holding the disc, but as soon as you let go, it's like the disc is going to do something. And
Okay.
yeah, so it's definitely a lot of, and you can make it as technical as you want, or you could make it as just like feeling based as you want. But yeah, definitely when you're designing them, like my engineering skills with like I make all of the discs like in CAD and 3D print them to prototype them and stuff like that. So that all that more technical stuff, I guess, definitely comes in handy.
And I will say, just to clarify, our discs aren't produced and manufactured in America. We are designed, prototyped, researched, all of that aspect here in our warehouse in San Antonio with our like family business.
Mhm.
They are actually manufactured using compression molding in China, where they have such a vast availability of the recycled materials. So all of them are going to recycling centers where we are able to just get them at the source, brought back to us where we do a ton of quality control, inspection. We weigh and inspect every single disc. It's like we'll get like thousands of them, and Austin and I will sit down with like those food scales and weigh them and mark the weight. So we do a ton of the work, but in terms of the actual compression molding, that is not done in-house. It's something that we really want to do.
Yeah.
But the machinery can be like $100,000.
And
So we're not
Wow.
there
the
yet.
time of actually making it,
Learning how to use it.
Yeah.
Once I'm
Yeah.
out of the army, hopefully I'll have some more time to
Yeah, definitely.
run
It's-
this.
That's
What?
that's
Cool.
great for you all to be, being able to use like fully recycled materials to be making these new things.
Yeah, Austin played around a lot with while I'm at work. He did all the fun stuff, getting to do the inventing to find the right formula.
Yeah,
But
most discs and like most discs in the industry are made of plastic.
Hmm.
But ours are made of rubber, which makes them like very unique. Like there's only like 2 companies right now that actually make discs out of like pure rubber. So yeah, we were able to use like basically like rubber can't be recycled exactly the same way that plastic can be, but it's like basically like grind up product that was like thrown out from other manufacturing processes into like a powder, and then the powder gets like put into our discs with like some other like natural rubber. So it's just like kind of an amalgamation of stuff.
yeah.
But
That's awesome.
Does that make it more durable and longer lasting?
The recycled content, I would say, doesn't really impact those things. Which in plastic it does. It actually makes things less durable.
That's what I
But
meant.
in rubber, I would say it's the same. Yeah, like
Okay.
plastic, like kind of deteriorates every
Yeah.
time you melt it down and stuff. But
Right.
yeah, rubber, since it's like ground up, it's kind of just a different situation. But yeah, the rubber in general makes them like be able to maintain their shape longer,
Right.
basically. Like because you in disc golf you hit a bunch of trees
Yeah. Yeah.
or the ground or like just
Yes, you do.
Mhm.
yeah.
I do
Yeah.
at least. I don't know about him, but
I'm
hitting
sure I
everything.
would.
Depending on where you live, like every throw you're gonna hit a tree. So
Uh-huh.
gotta be
So-
pretty durable.
Would you say with them having this higher rubber content as compared to what it sounds like the majority of manufacturers using plastic, is that like, I guess like what I'm thinking is like affect the weight to make them easier or harder to throw? Because
Oh,
granted,
well,
I don't
yeah.
know a whole lot about disc golf, but
I don't
it
either.
just seems like it might make it heavier, but I don't know of the whole
Yeah.
chemical process and all that.
Yeah, that is a good question. Weight is definitely a big factor and a factor that people look for. And that's why we weigh them
Mhm.
because people want to know how much they weigh.
Right.
There are like guidelines, like, or I guess more than guidelines. There's rules about like
Mhm.
the how a disc needs to be made in order to be considered like legal for tournament play. So, for example, like the maximum weight is 175 grams. All of our discs, or generally, all of our discs are below the maximum weight. But the material is like more dense than plastic. So there's
Yeah.
kind of like this weird thing where we have to use less volume basically
Mhm.
in our disc to make an appropriate weight. But yeah, as far as them being easier to throw, I guess the main advantage uh, with rubber discs, yeah. Sorry, I'm fidgety.
We're Italian, and we just
It's okay.
gesticulate
I'll
a
do
little
that too. I am a talker
Talk with the hands. Talk with the
He's doing it like
hands.
kind of near the
Go
mic.
ahead and
just
do
like
it because I don't like it.
Yeah, some of the people in the audience are saying you're cutting out a little bit. So
yeah,
try-
I'm thinking it's our gesticulation.
Yeah,
Oh, it may be.
I
Sorry.
can't help. It's part of my being.
It's
I'll
okay.
gesticulate lower. I'll gesticulate below the table.
It's okay. Do it. It's all right.
You're talking about
Yeah, the rubber, like basically they're more flexible. And that basically makes it so there's less, I guess, action. Like when you hit a tree, it doesn't kick as far, or if you hit the ground, like it doesn't skip as far or roll. Because like if you've ever played frisbee, and maybe you tried to throw it to your friend, but you threw it into the ground, and then it rolls like
Yeah.
100 feet away from your friend, and they gotta,
Yep.
oh, why'd you throw it over there? So that happens in disc golf all the time. Like you hit the ground and it rolls, or it skips way far away from where you're aiming. So in that sense, a lot of beginners find good success because it's like you don't get as much of the random chance, like bad things happening. If you threw a good shot, it stays a good shot. If you threw a bad shot, it's not as bad. So
And
yeah.
I think that's so unique to rubber because plastic doesn't have the, I don't know, like the ability to absorb force the way that rubber
Right.
can. You know what I
The
mean?
doesn't have the give that the rubber
Yeah.
does.
Yes, totally
I think
different
it would be-
process.
I would much rather use rubber.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also been great for like teaching kids or clinics or people with disabilities. A lot of our fans and customers who are older and they struggle with arthritis or carpal tunnel find that that's an easier material, which
Yeah.
I try to cross stitch and I'm getting really bad carpal tunnel. So
Yeah.
I really love the rubber in my hands.
Mhm.
But it's great for kids. And anytime we get a disc that isn't perfectly able to be sold in the store, instead of throwing them away, we send them out. We donate hundreds, if not thousands, of discs every
wow.
year to
Oh, that's
schools,
awesome.
nonprofits. A lot of like what Paul Macbeth Foundation is doing, where they're trying to promote disc golf internationally. So we just
Yeah.
sent them to Uganda. So it's just
Oh,
great to
that's
be able
cool.
to find, innovative ways to reduce waste and improve communities, because
That's
disc
awesome.
golf is super inclusive, because it's not like
Yeah.
golf where it's like $80 to play around or
Right.
something, you know.
Yeah.
It's in public parks. It's pretty easy to have a disc or two and get on the
Yeah.
course. So I think it's a sport that we want to keep
That's awesome.
improving the inclusivity. Yeah,
I love that you do that. That's great.
we try. We do our little bit.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
kind of explain the premise of like how disc golf works, like how a game works?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So it's basically the rules of golf, where the objective is to go from one designated area, like the tee box, to the hole, which in disc golf terms is the basket, and get there in as few throws as possible. So you basically throw off the tee. Wherever it comes to rest, you throw your next shot from there. And then in the end, they have a basket, which is like, if you've been in a park with disc golf, you've probably seen some weird like chain
Yeah,
capturing device.
with the little chains coming off of it.
Yeah. So that's basically like, it was designed to where you can throw the disc into the chains and then it like gets pushed into the basket. And you just, try to do it in as few throws as possible. You play 18 holes.
Sorry, I was like thinking of myself. I'm so sorry.
Every time I go to Knoxville, I try and drag Dina out to go with me, but she won't go with me. So.
I will go. I will go. If I don't have to run, I will go.
No running. We can go light and
No
easy.
running
Just a
required.
walk.
But so basically, like your tee is here. This is where you've got to make it. If you only make it like to here, then you move up to here to throw it again.
Yep, you move up to it.
Does it have like the same point system like golf does?
Yeah, like they have like pars for every hole, and then if you get like one under par, it's a birdie. If you get one over par, it's a bogey, stuff like that. But
If you're me, you get double bogeys.
yeah, you get double bogeys, triple bogeys, as many bogeys as you want.
That's nice.
You only get so many below par. And yeah, it's a sport to go along with like not wanting to run. It's a sport that you could get really serious about, and like there's a whole professional scene. People get paid good money for this, or you could literally, people are out like drinking during their round, like basically having a party while they're playing disc golf. So
I'd pay to see a group of drunk people trying to throw that around.
Yeah, it's hard sober, so I would not be a good candidate for that. But
It's been, I keep telling my wife, I found some property up in Tennessee, and I keep telling her, I was like, look, we can put a store here, and then we can make this area an 18-hole park. And she's like, I don't think that I'd do that. So
Hey,
that's
I'll do
been
that.
one of my kind of dreams, is to do that. But I got to get out. I got to get her out of Atlanta first. So, but
Can we?
yeah,
put
it is.
zip
Well, go
lines
ahead.
on there.
You put what on there?
Zip lines.
Zip lines.
we
so-
also need a really nasty, like weirdly discolored blue pond that we can have like little bumper boats.
Oh no.
oh, that'd be
Let me
fun.
tell
Those
you.
little paddle ones, the swans.
Not all discs
Yeah,
float.
that would work.
I found that out the hard way. Not all discs floats. So.
yeah, you got to go diving for them sometimes
Yeah.
if it's really special too.
Yeah, Brenda in the chat asked about wheelchair access. I have seen that there are some courses that are going to start being wheelchair access. I think that's kind of cool. So
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about actually building. Like one day, we have no money, but when we have money, building a course that helps people with a lot of different physical capabilities and needs be able to enjoy the sport. Because the great thing about disc golf is there's so many trees and hills and rocks and obstacles, but that's also such a downside when there's so many people in many different communities who want to enjoy the sport. But a lot of the cities and stuff, that's a lot of money to pour concrete and all. They don't want to do it. So
Yeah,
You could probably
maybe one day.
You could probably get a grant for that.
Yeah, I feel like that that'd be great, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my idea. I wanted to have it like a joint private community park, and see if you can get Grant and have them help you, because if you have a course, you got to maintain it.
Mhm.
So and everybody thinks, oh well, that's not that big a deal, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I guess to further expand on disc golf generally, there are a lot of disc golf courses in like public parks, and it's from people like that just love disc golf who, go to their local government meetings and just, be a proponent for it and convince them that it's a good idea to get it installed. And there's been a lot of communities, like small communities, that have built up a lot of like disc golf tourism industry and stuff like that. And yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's not like golf where you have to like completely level the whole countryside to like reestablish a course. Like it's just like you take a piece of nature and you just cut like a little bit of an opening for your disc to get through, and it's nice. It's more natural, I guess.
Oh, that's why I was saying, like, with like you all coming to West Virginia and everything. I think you'd have a good outlet for that with the tourism industry.
Yeah, especially with I know the Burton families, the Seth Burton Memorial Disc Golf Course. Yeah. They're very involved in the community over in Fairmont, and I'd love to work with them somehow and support what they're already doing there, because
we're moving to the Fairmont, West Virginia area. There's a local club there who, like, for example, they put on a big tournament every year, and like in recent years, like the Marion County is like one of the primary like event sponsors, so they're getting a lot of help and connection with the government. And in West Virginia, I mean, it's a place that is known for natural beauty, and that's what it wants to put forth first. And I feel like disc golf is a good compliment to that.
I was gonna say you get a good 2-in-1 if you're putting it out and around the hills and everything for people to be able to play and enjoy the mountains and the trees and everywhere around it.
Yeah.
And even like trees. At all.
Well, even on base, like I'm over here at Fort Sam in San Antonio, Texas, and in one of our parks on base, we have a disc golf course. And I think not only this one's flat, which I think is great. It's near our Center for the Intrepid Spirit, so it's just near a lot of medical centers where soldiers and service members might be injured and be rehabbing. But it's a flat course, a lot like it's easier to play. There's not as many obstacles or hills. But it's so good for your mental health to be outside, even if it's a low impact type of exercise, to be in nature. It's just such a mindful activity. So honestly, when I disc golf sometimes, I'm not playing for score. I'm getting double bogeys, but I'm having like a mental health, like relaxing.
Just the fresh air, the scenery, the sunshine.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
It's so many benefits.
Doing something is fun. I mean, just going outside to do something.
Yeah.
The only frustrating part is when you lose your disc, you spend 20 minutes looking for it. But
oof, that is rough.
That's the only frustrating part.
When you're looking around in the woods, you might find Bigfoot too, though.
That's true.
And when we played in Florida, we found snakes, alligators. I was like, I do not want to play in Florida.
No.
You found too much stuff.
Yeah. It was definitely unique. There was places on the courses where they mark, if your disc goes over here, leave it. Just leave it.
Okay.
Like, good advice. The natives and locals know.
Yeah.
That's
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, and we talked about this earlier. I don't know what the fascination with disc golf and Bigfoot is, but a lot of times, a lot of the memes or a lot of the characters, there's even some discs that have got some Bigfoot stamped on them. What the heck? Do you think it's just from the people walking around and maybe they find Bigfoot instead of their disc? What's your all's thoughts on that?
Bigfoot is a big fan of disc golf.
I would say it's
That's
probably
nice.
because they're in the woods, squatching and golfing.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, if you spend enough time outside in nature and, you know,
The heat
more
starts
secluded
getting to you a
areas.
little bit.
Yeah.
Could be it.
I don't know. I just feel like they go together. Like we talked about. A lot of times you're out there just searching through the woods for a little frisbee. Like you get kind of curious. Like you see things on the course and in nature that maybe you've never noticed before, and maybe you.
Poof, you run into Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Could be.
I see a great merch opportunity here, golfing and squatching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing to have like a Sasquatch themed disc golf course. That would be mine.
I was gonna say that'll be your.
Yes. You
Yeah,
better.
like Sasquatch holding the basket up.
Yes,
Yeah.
elevated
Absolutely.
basket.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You could
Oh
have.
yeah.
Yeah, holding the one up and.
Oh, I have thought about this a lot. Trust me, it's the wife who hasn't thought about it a lot. So,
Hiding behind trees and.
I've already picked property in 2 locations twice before in Tennessee. So
I
That
love
would be
it.
a fun one.
yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's probably, well, my favorite sport to participate in as I get older, but I enjoy watching on TV. And I was gonna ask, you all remember James? What is James's name that made the holy shot?
Conrad?
James Conrad.
Mhm.
I think he turned disc golf around for the world with that one shot.
Hmm.
And I'm sure you ladies haven't seen it, but basically to even tie, he had to make it, and he was like on the other side of the horseshoe from it.
Did you get a hole in one?
No, it
Or
was a
was
hole
all-
one. It was a par 3, and
Oh.
this was his 3. He had to get it.
Uh-huh.
No, Dina, he made a touchdown.
He even stated he didn't think there was any way possible that he would make that shot,
Yeah.
because as we were talking about, the way you throw it does things, the wings do things. His particular style of disc uses more of a flat edge, so it's not as aerodynamic, but it's more flexible on the different curves.
Yeah.
He threw it up, went around the trees, couldn't even see it, and he heard it. And
Oh.
you know, it was carried on ESPN, ABC,
Wow.
CBS, Yahoo. It was on every sports network ever.
Yahoo.
Yeah, Yahoo. Back in the woods too long. All right.
Be checking out that
Oh,
there
my
Yahoo.
That's why Yahoo Sports. Come on now. But yeah,
Yahoo.
Let me go log into my Yahoo account.
you log into your AOL. I'll log into my Yahoo. Yeah,
Oh my
Yahoo,
goodness.
whatever the hell you call it. But yeah, I mean, I think that changed it for everybody. As far as, you know, first off, that disc became the most popular disc in the world. I know you guys are sitting here going, God, why couldn't that have been mine? But
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine the production, because everybody wanted that disc. It's funny, and like you said, each disc, how do you say, it becomes your own. You beat it in, so to speak. So, and do you know he still is using that disc?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great, and that's crazy. But he's been offered a lot of money for it.
Oh.
I bet.
think he can run.
Mm.
So
They can go up in value.
Yeah,
If they get
very
expensive.
oddly expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think that shot, and like, you know, all the stuff that went into it, like what it meant, how hard it was. It's one of the things that like every good like sport that people watch needs, where it's like everybody who watches it can see how hard it was. Like everybody that watches it is like amazed by it. You know what I mean? Like it's obvious to you like how special it was. And I feel like that was a big moment for the sport. And yeah, I mean, professional disc golf, disc golf has only been around since like the 70s. It was invented by like hippies who were like into frisbee and, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, Steady Ed Hedrick and basically invented it, and he was a hippie and he was also an engineer. So
Oh,
boom,
Perfect.
there's disc golf. And so anyway, yeah, it's professional disc golf is definitely like blown up lately, and it's pretty cool. I think to have like a new sport become, I guess, like professionalized in like
Yeah.
our current era, and like people have more of a say in like what it's going to be like and all that.
Mhm.
And I think it's also awesome because disc golf has like a very strong community, also like rooting for all of the female players as well. Like
Mhm.
it's like really cool to be into like female disc golf, which is like something that I guess is less common with sports, unfortunately.
I was gonna ask, is it like a more male-dominated sport like other things, or is it more like you've got more of a mix?
Yeah, it's more male dominated, generally. But yeah, I guess like the discrepancy between like the professional side of things as far as male versus female. Um, Obviously it's hard, but I feel like there is like a big push to like make them as equal as possible. Like I know that they've had some of the biggest payout in like the previous biggest payout in disc golf history. Like they had like the winner of the female division and the male division like get paid out the same amount.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, there's just like it's hard like because people are people, but generally I would say there's like a very big community watching the female side of the sport, and so it's cool to see. Like I watch the female side of the sport. I have a friend, my cousin Eric, watches the female division and like barely watches the men's division. So it's just like, and I don't know, it's good to see like that sort of support, and I think maybe that's just a product of it becoming popular in today's age. Like
Now,
more
do
of a
they
priority.
do anything different in the female side of things than they do on the male? Because I know like I can't stand watching baseball. Sports just aren't my thing in general. But I guess with my niece is a really big softball player, and now I find watching like professional women's softball very, very interesting, but I just can't get into like baseball or anything like that. So is there anything that's done differently, or
Not too differently. They, depending on like the length of the hole, they will like have like a tee for the men's division and a tee for the women's division.
Okay.
So like maybe make it a little bit shorter, or maybe just make the par like one higher or something.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's the same sport. They
pretty
use the same-
pretty well balanced?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Now, also, I don't want to skirt around. There's controversy about that as well. So there's a player was in the men's division, is now playing in the females division. So there's a lot of controversy around that right now. So
Yeah. As with anything, there's debate and there's room for improvement. But you know, I can tell people are trying, and I feel like there's a good. The people of disc golf I feel like generally want the sport to be inclusive and want the sport to be like something for everybody and appreciated. All
And
sides.
I think a lot of the times it's like we're just here for the sports, man.
Yeah.
We're just here to see a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with a lot of industries and sports and things, I mean, I want everyone to feel safe and be able to play the sport they love. And I think every type of sport, every athlete, whatever, is trying to figure out the best way to include everyone and make everyone.
there's a way. I just don't think it's been figured out yet.
It's above my pay grade, but I think the important thing is continuing the discussion and continuing.
It is out there. Yeah.
I don't
All
think
those things.
with disc golf it wouldn't make as much difference. I mean,
Read some of the news that a lot of the females feel like that they're losing money because of this.
oh well, maybe they are. I don't know. I mean,
So,
that would be a problem.
anatomy and physiology.
If I
We
was
had,
a
I don't know if
player.
you're familiar with MMA, but we had Miranda Maverick on. She's
Yeah.
flyweight 14th ranked in the country. And she went into a big thing on this about just the anatomy. She's also a psychologist. Or she's a psychiatrist now. I can't remember. She's
Psychiatrist.
she's got her double masters or something, and she boxes or fights. But but
she's got to get that pent up rage out somewhere.
She works for Hershey. How does she's a psychiatrist who works for
You don't
Hershey?
know.
You
don't know.
Hey, maybe the guys that make the resets are nuts. I don't know, but no, she went into a big thing about the anatomy and physiology and the difference of, just the arms. And she said, even in her division, if she got a lower ranked person come in that had any experience, you'd probably kick her ass. And I was like, whoa, I was really surprised, but she went into it from the medical side. So, yeah. So she is very against it because she's in a, it's not a competitive sport. It's a contact sport. That's the words I'm looking for. So she is definitely against it. So, and I can't say to blame her. So,
there's so many sides. Yeah. There's so many iterations. And I think I'm just, I'm just really invested in learning more about how to be more informed and things that I haven't considered before, and continuing the conversation. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. Like, somebody's gonna end up feeling hurt no matter what's decided. So it's
that's true.
One of those things, but I think as a whole, it's just great to see, the female division as it is in disc golf being, I don't know, like legitimized in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's disenfranchised or seen as less than, and to have it feel inclusive and to feel representative.
The sports trickled down to the collegiate level. There's disc golf teams that are sponsored by colleges. The SEC is actually probably one of the biggest, I think, supporters of it. So that's kind of cool.
We sponsor the Texas A&M Disc Golf Club.
Oh, that's
not
awesome.
team, right? It's a club, but
that's cool.
A lot of them still have to be clubs that just do their own competitions.
And I think are we already sponsoring Grand Canyon University, or are we just their club team?
They have a club team that we've helped a little bit. Theirs is newer though.
Yeah, I went to college there, and so the customers was like, "Oh, GCU, we have a club," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! What a small world,
Yeah.
And it's great. I keep looking in the Tennessee Volunteers store for disc golf shirts and stuff, but I even emailed them. Why don't you have something? Come on, you might be like this. They weren't bad, but nobody knew. But so.
Now, do you get like as many? I mean, obviously you have like fans like very devoted to the sport, but do you see as many like crazy fans as like you see how like serious people take like football and stuff like that?
I don't know. Football is pretty extreme, I feel like.
Yeah.
As far as fan craziness.
It's kind of hard to stay in the woods. So.
Yeah. I mean, disc golf is definitely an obsession for a lot of people, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it's like, and I've been guilty of it at times.
Oh my goodness! So. We work all day disc golf, and then he's got the disc golf broadcast on, and then he's got disc golf podcast. And I'm like, honey, I just need, the living room is just filled with discs because that's what
I need a break.
I'm like, I just need a work-life balance, just like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Once a week, she gets to come home, no disc golf, and she's just listening to her true crime podcasts all night. And just nothing.
That's a true crime. So.
Why not true crime?
Because you don't have one.
Oh.
Yeah. It is like, I mean, I've got discs I just hang up on the wall because I think they're cool looking. And then I started out with, I think, like, I don't know, some used ones from like Play It Again Sports, and a bag, and now I have to sit and think, all right, this one does this, because it's something else that we haven't really talked about, is each disc actually, by its weight and design, has a different flight pattern. Most of them tend to go kind of straight and then drift off to the right. That's called a fade or a glide. And then there are some, unless you throw backwards, which I end up hitting people in the head, but it will go to the left. So I haven't found a good one that would kind of go straight and go to the left. That one I haven't found yet. So I keep looking. I think it's me, but
Probably.
I was gonna say that sounds like it's a you problem.
Yeah.
yeah, it's with the different angle you throw it and things, and then this thing where they throw it like with their sidearm. What the hell is that about? I don't.
I'm working on that.
I could do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to throw it. The main ones are backhand, which is like what most people do when they throw a frisbee,
Like a frisbee.
something like that. And then they have a forehand or a sidearm is the same thing.
I was like a different. Oh, wait a minute. You're saying this is
It causes the disc to spin different.
Yeah.
If you throw it this way, it's spinning this way. If you throw it this way, it's spinning this way.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because my first thought would be to like take it like this and just like.
Well, now that's called a tomahawk. I've done
So,
that.
so you are allowed to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. You
Okay.
can even
Pretty much
roll
whatever
it.
you want.
Oh.
However, as long as you get it in the basket.
Yeah, and well, as they were saying, with their rubber, which I like because a lot of the places that I've played, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, and I looked it up earlier. Binks, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So I like that one on my putt in because I know it's not going to go 8 miles further if it hits the ground. It's going to stop. Well, not, of course, getting it there is still an art, but a lot of people don't think about, you don't want it to, because when I played in Vermont, like I was telling you guys before, it would just like roll off the cliff and you're like,
Oh gosh.
you gotta go get it.
You're so mad.
And I think what gets lost sometimes in disc golf is you think like, there's so many things happening. Like we're outside, we have to get the disc to the basket, we have to pick the right disc. But when Austin used to rock climb, there's like betas. There's like certain paths that you take to get to where you're going. And they're very specific. You can use different holds, like in rock climbing to get to the top, right? And in disc golf, it's the same thing. You almost like have to know your beta. You have to have reasoning for why you're picking the disc, the material, with the conditions happening, where you are, like in the fairway, what obstacle you're footing. Like there's so much cognitive, like things happening, processes. It's not just like, I'm going to throw this disc. You have to actually think about it. Like there's very involved.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I guess depending on like conditions and everything, you would probably have to have like a variety of ones to choose from based on like the wind, humidity, rain, whatever.
A cactus, a tree.
Yeah.
How far you are from the basket.
If somebody's looking at you wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. How weak you feel that day.
Yeah. Yeah. How tired you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
There's
can put your neighborhood back over and over and it never be the same, literally.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of creativity in it. Like that's part of the fun. It is a challenge. It's always a challenge because you're never going to be in the same spot twice.
Yeah.
And like 4 people teeing off on the same hole, it's very common to like have all 4 of them do something different. Like maybe one person goes forehand, one person goes backhand, one person goes over the tree, one person goes under the tree, and it's just like your preference, what the conditions are like, what shots you're best at, So it's I don't know, it's fun in that way where everyone kind of has their own little style.
Yeah. I don't know. It's nice.
That sounds fun.
Well, listen, before we let you guys get out of here, we always ask if you've ever had any paranormal experiences. We saw Bigfoot on the disc golf course. That's kind of like our bread and butter, but that is our question we love to ask everybody because we get such unique stories. And the thing that we like is that these stories may not get told otherwise, because why would you go on a podcast? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Austin has a better one. I'm gonna let him go first, and then I will just. I'll be the disappointment, like the good news and then the bad news, Unless you want me to get mine over with first, but his is cool.
It doesn't matter. Either one.
Flip a coin. Y'all got to live with each other.
Yeah, because yours is longer.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's been, I guess, a while since this has happened. Now, I was like a senior in high school. I guess that's 10 years now. So it's been a while. So I'll try my best to recount it. Yeah, I during summer, senior year of high school, I went on like a mission trip with my sister and some friends to Haiti. We like stayed like with an orphanage and like hung out with the kids and like did little projects for them and like helped some of the women in the community, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was awesome. I don't know what your guys' experiences are with like traveling and stuff like that, but you know, Haiti, obviously a third world country, and like first of all, beautiful country, awesome people. But with a third world country, I feel like I guess a lot of the distractions of modern life are lesser, and there's still like a very strong connection to like spiritual happenings in the world. So yeah, so that's very interesting. You hear some incredible stories from people there, and so I guess mine. It was like the last night that we were staying there. We were sleeping in the orphanage and like the upstairs. We had like I was in the guys' room and then the girls were next door, like through across the wall or whatever. And while we were there, there was like a church nearby that we could hear. That was like every night we were there, they would like sing like worship songs and stuff at night. And the pastor who was like running the orphanage told us that they were doing that basically like to like bring positive energy into the world and like kind of ward off like evil spirits and stuff like that. And we remember like the last night we were there, it was like coming to be nighttime, and we like noticed that we like didn't hear them singing. Which at first we were like, okay, that's it's weird. They're not singing tonight, but whatever.
Yeah.
And so say that to preface what's about to happen.
You haven't gotten to the start?
All right. So anyway, I wake up in the middle of the night. I have food poisoning, which is basically probably the most haunting thing really that happened.
Oh my goodness.
So I wake up in the middle of the night and I go out my door, and like one of my friends from the girls' room had like just exited their room, right? And was like clearly distraught. So I like went over and asked like, what's going on? Like, we're in the middle of the night, this is weird. And so apparently what had happened was and these are people that I've trusted my whole life. We're Christians, but we're not like holy rollers. We're not used to like the, intense
more
stuff.
Expressive.
More expressive stuff. So this was a strange experience for us. But basically, like one of my friends had like felt like she had seen a little boy like from the orphanage standing by her bed for like at first she thought he was there. She tried to talk to him and like he wasn't responding, and then like she saw him like with black eyes like staring at her, and she like so I guess she got the impression like, okay, I don't know what I'm seeing, but I'm just gonna pretend it's not there and keep trying to see.
Not today, Satan.
Oh wait, kid.
But, very natural response. Like, okay, maybe if I just ignore it, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Then, like later on, like she kept looking over and like it was not moving. Whatever this thing was she was seeing was just standing there. Later on, like around the time that I woke up, basically, one of our other friends started literally like screaming, like in her sleep screaming. This friend gets up, like who was seeing the little boy all night, gets up and runs over to her and like tries to wake her up, like shake her awake, but she's like screaming and shouting like, get off me, get off me. And then another friend like across the room starts doing the exact same thing. and is
Somebody
screaming
needs to
like,
find that little boy's mama. Somebody needs to leave the girls alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
probably not gonna happen.
yeah, the first girl apparently, like in her dream, whatever this was, state is able to like she like starts praying, I guess, and like is able to wake up and get up, and then she runs over to the other girl, and like she's able to wake her up, and then like it turns out that they like when they recounted like what they were experiencing to each other, they were like experiencing the exact same thing. Like, they saw
Oh, wow.
like the same like being in their dream, like doing the same thing to them, like smothering them, holding them down.
Oh, gosh.
Like they had like the exact same dream at the exact same time with the creepy like whatever
Boy
demon
demon
boy
thing.
in the room seen by the other girl.
It's
That's so weird.
Yeah, I would have been in the boys' room. Sounds like not everything was good over
Yeah,
there.
the boys were we were chilling until
Yeah.
about it. But
Food poisoning.
Like, is that all right? Like, I'm gonna come hang out with y'all because
Definitely.
I just can't right now.
Yeah, there's actually a thing about the black-eyed children, is what they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're usually not very good.
I was gonna say, aren't they one of the ones too that you have to like invite inside?
Well, yes.
well,
Because-
I would say that may have happened because it was like we were in an orphanage, and like I'm
yeah.
pretty sure she saw the boy and thought like, hey, like what do you need? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that counts as inviting.
I need this pillow on your face.
Yeah, if you listen to some of our guests, inviting them in could be as simple as having a welcome doormat.
Yeah.
On your
Wow.
And I mean, it's gotten to, my wife has listened to so many of these shows. She's taken up our doormats.
I don't
So,
blame her. I wouldn't want a
Yeah.
visitation. I'm good.
So,
Yeah, I don't know that there's any truth. Of course, there's no science to this anyhow, but
yeah.
none that we can, physically or mentally. Well, mentally we can, but physically produce.
Nothing tangible.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Sometimes I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, the black-eyed children are scary. So, did you see the child, or was it just you? You were there with you. You're probably lucky.
Just fighting his own demons, it sounds like.
Yeah.
He was dealing with the distraught women.
Yeah.
And his food poisoning.
Yeah. And the food
What's
poisoning.
going on?
I'm
Yeah.
stuck in the bathroom. All the women are
They're all
somebody
freaking.
just
I don't know
take
what's
me
going
home.
One night, all the girls want to cuddle.
Oh no,
Totally for
it is.
protection.
Yeah.
Well, how about you? You said you had a little story for us too.
I just have two little ones, no black-eyed children or anything. But when I was when I was in college, I lived with my grandmothers, and they lived in like Phoenix, Arizona. In Arizona and like New Mexico, those areas are there's a lot of spiritualism and stuff. Interesting encounters and things. But my grandma's told me that there was in their home they had like 5 different portals or something that they had closed because they had so much activity coming in, and that when my dad was a kid, he used to see ghosts all the time and like was really upset by what was coming through the portals.
Yeah.
And I lived there for 10 months when I was in college, and they put me in the room which was like the doll room, and they're very creative. They're super like creative and like spiritual, but they would make spirit dolls where we would like make them and sew them up, and like the lore is like you put them on in the trees and the full moon, that type of stuff. But anyway, I was in this room and there's tons of dolls and jewelry, and like it was just a really kind of mystical space. Every morning at the exact same time, it was like 3:22 in the morning.
Oh,
Every
no.
single day.
The witching hour.
I would wake up and just feel like something darker than the room was just standing over me. And I couldn't get like an intent out of it. I just didn't know the feeling. I wasn't terrified, but I just felt like something was curious. Like just looking.
Yeah.
It was just gave me kind of an eerie feeling, but nothing ever happened. But every day for 10 months, 3:22, I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh
Wow.
God. Looking at like, is it just you kind of just felt it there, you know.
They're like, what is this thing? We seen all the rest of these that look like us. What's
This one's not as good. Like, I don't know what happened to this one. It might need to cook a little longer.
something's wrong with that one? Why can that one walk around? We can't do that.
Yeah.
And
what 322 is in angel numbers? That would be interesting.
it could be because they're very into angels and stuff. And I mean, that's
but it was
cool.
darker. I don't know
It was
why.
dark. But again, I didn't feel like threatened. I just felt like
Yeah.
off put, you know.
Yeah.
But then the only other thing is when Austin and I were moving to San Antonio for the Army, we stayed in this little town called Demings, New Mexico. Again, super cute. Like they had this little pasta shop that was in an old bank, like cool stuff like that, small town.
Yeah.
And we stayed at this hotel.
Oh, we need that.
I could go for some pasta, honestly.
Yeah.
But we stayed in this hotel 2 different times from going back and forth from California to Texas. But the first time, I remember waking up at some weird hour and just feeling something standing over me and then like sitting on the bed, like that pressure kind of imprints. And I don't know why, but it did not feel human. Like it felt like alien-y, like really supernatural. I just got this impression. So I was freaked out, but I went back to bed. The second time, like 3 or 4 years later, we went to that same hotel in Demings and the air conditioner was off. There was no fans in the room. And I woke up at like 3 a.m. again, some random time, to stuff on my nightstand falling off the nightstand as if somebody was walking by the bed.
Oh man.
And like it gave me that same really creepy like feeling. But Austin didn't wake up. There's no, I didn't push the stuff off the nightstand. There was no airflow. I have no idea what it was, but that hotel in Demings.
That's weird.
At La Quinta or whatever it is.
Yeah.
How are you?
Was it the same room?
I don't remember the room.
Oh.
So I'll have to ask you this with looking this up. You said that whenever you were living with your grandmothers, you were in college.
Yeah.
And that you were in college for, what were you studying?
Psychology.
And that's what you're doing now, right? So the angel number 322 is a sign that you're on the right path.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Keep it up and don't lose hope, even when it feels like you're walking in the dark.
Oh.
They were nice.
Nice.
Well, it didn't feel like it just felt, you know.
Yeah.
And it's also a sign from above that you need to trust and believe in yourself and to have faith in your guardian angels and ascended masters.
That's sweet. That's very much my grandma's. They're very into guardian angels. Like that's very on brand.
Yeah. That's cool.
Very cool.
So not all super creepy dolls.
Like I'll say no. I made one that was kind of cute. You know, my spirit doll was kind of cute.
Well, I know we've kept you guys here for an hour, and I promise you we wouldn't keep you all night. I want you to come back. I want you to consider sponsoring us sometime. You get to come over in the Challenge Coin show and help me design a disc golf challenge.
That sounds awesome. We would love that.
Miranda Maverick came over and she made a challenge coin. It's pretty dang awesome, if I can say so. She's got a side business. She sells. She is not a sponsor yet. I keep pestering her. She sells Prowler pickles. Go to prowlerpickles.com and you can get pickles made by Miranda Maverick. And I designed their logo and come up with some of the cool stuff. So
I'll take some Miranda Maverick pickles.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We are growing. We're on WDJY in Atlanta. We're on WFRN in Nashville. We're in Denver. We're in San Francisco. We're in Washington, D.C. So we're growing. We're moving.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said we're going to need sponsors soon. So.
And when you guys get to West Virginia, we can meet up and we'll go
drag her out and take her out and teach her.
I can't wait. I'm going to make jerseys right now. We can all match.
Yep. I'm down for it. I call number 69 though.
With that, I'm going to have to end the show. No, but yeah, seriously. We'd like to do something together, but come back and visit us. And I'm going to keep in touch with you because I am going to bug you to be on the other show for the challenge coins. So.
I'd love that. Please do.
That'll be fun.
You'll have
Right.
to come join us for the Misfits one Saturday too. You'll
Yeah.
like
I'm
it.
in. Say
All
less, I'm
right.
there.
Cool.
I don't know if we'll invite a psychologist to this. She might tell us we're all
I-
nuts.
I think she'd love it.
Yeah, you would.
Card carry members. All right, I'm gonna let y'all go. Thank you very much for coming, and we will see you again soon, I hope.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been so much fun.
Thank
It was
you.
great meeting you guys.
So
Yeah, it
nice
was
to meet
great.
y'all.
You too.
See
Have
you
a good
soon.
night.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a great first half. We also have a second guest who is backstage and waiting.
Hey, you're
Need to fix the mic.
yeah, something's wrong
Me?
with your You've got a lot of static or something. Something's wrong with your output.
It sounded good, like whole beginning, and then there towards the end, it sounded like you were.
Okay. Well, on my end, it sounds great.
It's doing it again.
Yeah, you're really low, and there's a like hiss.
I don't hear the hiss, but it sounds like he's. On my end, it sounds like you're covering the mic trying to talk.
No, I
Nope.
hear a hiss too.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm listening to my monitor and I don't hear it. So
Well, it's bad.
Great. That's what it is. All right. Well, let's invite our other guest back out here. Out here. He is an author. You got me thrown off track here. He's an author of several books. One of them. I wonder if it's Shay, when you mute, it goes away. Because I hear it.
Yeah, I just noticed that whenever I put myself on mute, it.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is it's a chew, Shay. So
apparently
it is.
All right. Well, let me. Heck, I'm just going to bring him out because I done lost my train of thought. Joseph.
Hello.
Sorry.
Hi. How are you?
How are you doing? Welcome to the
Good.
show.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself, since I did such a horrible job. I just said you wrote some books and stuff. It got me thrown off. I hear a noise.
I'm sorry.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet everybody over the phone or over the Zoom. My name is Joe Gioconda, and I've got some things to talk about that relate to my books, and then we can talk about some paranormal stuff too. But my background is I studied to be a Catholic priest for 4 years. I attended a seminary in New York, left that, did not become a priest. I eventually became a lawyer and an author. So I'm married, I have children, I have a secular life, and I have a law practice. I've been practicing law for about 27 years in New York and in Pennsylvania. And I started writing books about 10 years ago, non-academic books, novels. And my background on those is that it sort of came out of my interest in both church history, religion, the paranormal, and also the more salacious details about serial killers and things like that in history, not modern history, but medieval and ancient history, where serial killers and that kind of thing occurred just as much as today. It just wasn't called serial killing. Didn't have that name until modern times, really. I think until the 70s or 80s, somebody coined the term serial killer at the FBI. But there were people throughout history that today we would brand as serial killers, and some of them were in positions of power. And that's one of the first book I wrote is about.
Okay, and which book was that? Because you've written like 6, haven't you?
Yeah, several. So I'll tell you how it evolved. So the first book I wrote came out of my interest in church history relating to a guy from the 1400s, late 1400s, whose name was Heinrich Kramer. And he also went by the name Heinrich Institorus. And this guy, who we would call him Henry, right? Heinrich means Henry. Henry was, by all accounts, completely evil and insane. But he believed what he was doing wholeheartedly was the right thing to do. And so he was stamping out witchcraft, right? The heresy of witchcraft, or at least that's what he claimed to be doing. And he wrote a book, which interestingly I read about, is the best-selling book of all time in human history. It was more best-selling than the Bible. And
Wow.
it's called The Hammer of Witches. That's the translation. In German, it was called Hexenhammer. And in Latin, it's called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. And what it was
I feel like I just recently heard about that.
It's been referenced in a lot of things. It was referenced in the Pope's Exorcist. It was mentioned in that movie. It was mentioned in the Da Vinci Code.
Where in the Da Vinci Code?
It's mentioned by Sir Teabing when he is talking to them, and he says the bloodiest book ever written, the Malleus was from the Hammer of Witches.
Okay.
And so he mentions it. It's also mentioned at length in the Pope's Exorcist, and with Russell Crowe mentioned in that too. So the Malleus Maleficarum is a book that is ostensibly a handbook for stamping out witchcraft. And it was written by this guy, Henry, in Stentora. So I sat down one day, having heard about it and my interest in church history and all of that. I sat down and I read a translation of it into English. And the first thing I noticed was, for a guy who was supposedly very anti-witchcraft and anti-occult, he was giving a lot of information and details about how to practice witchcraft. So it was odd because he was a churchman, right? He was a priest, and he was killing these women mostly, and he was killing these women for practicing witchcraft, and then he would gather the information about how witchcraft was supposedly done,
but handing them the information on a silver platter.
Exactly. And then that book that he wrote, containing all of these spells and incantations and herbal mixtures and descriptions of how to practice witchcraft, he then published and distributed throughout all of the church. So they said it was more popular than the Bible in the Middle Ages, because people knew the Bible. The Bible was sort of old news. And when they got this book that was all about how do you tell a witch does this, this, and this, it was better than watching a movie back then, right? It was like, read it to us again. We want to hear these stories about what the witches are doing.
Was that listed under like one of the most evil books in like American history or in history? I was gonna say, I watched a short video not too long ago of them talking about that, and it sounded familiar.
I'm sure it was in there, because the book itself, supposedly, if you believe historians, led to possibly millions of deaths, because it ended up in the possession of people like in Salem, Massachusetts, right? It was written in the 1400s.
That's what I was going to ask.
Salem, yeah. And so you had people like in modern age, well, modern, but the Salem age, right, 200 years later, reading these books, and they were influenced by it. And remember, they weren't even Catholic. So you had this book being written by a Catholic prelate, and he's publishing it and distributing it throughout the world, and it ends up in the hands of people in America, or what would become America, in Salem, Massachusetts, 200 years later, who were Protestant. So his influence was far, far greater than just the church. And it was even used by secular officials, by magistrates and so forth, to torture people and get confessions from them. So anyway, the Malleus Maleficarum fascinated me, because I started thinking, why would a guy who, he's crazy, obviously, and that's one way to just write him off and say he's crazy, but why would he write such a detailed book and then publish it and then kill millions of people? And you can say, well, he's crazy, like a Hitler type who was, megalomaniac.
Ulterior motives.
Yeah, that's where I wrote my book. Is I started playing with, what if the guy himself was part of something deeper and darker in the church? What if he was part of a cult inside the church, which is entirely plausible these days, right? That there was a sort of fifth column in the Catholic Church at the time that was doing satanic rituals or something like that. And so I wrote the novel with as much truthful and accurate history as I could possibly find. I spent 10 years researching this book.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, I hired researchers because I couldn't translate anything. I did know Latin from the seminary, so I could read some of the Latin, but I hired researchers. I went to Europe several times, went to the places where this occurred in Europe, in various places, and I spent a lot of time looking at the source material and trying to understand what I could about this guy, Henry. And there was very little written about him. I spoke to the 2 or 3 scholars in the world. One is at Harvard who translated his book most recently, and I talked to him and I said, "What's your theory on this guy?" And his theory was that he wasn't insane by modern standards. He was insane, but he was more of a zealot by medieval standards. But we couldn't really explain why his books contained all of this, blasphemy and witchcraft if he was a zealot. So, nobody knows. So my book follows the story based entirely on truth throughout this timeline, where I put in a fictional character who's a seminarian, which I identified with as someone who's studying. And this guy, Heinrich, sends him out on a fact-finding mission throughout Europe. And in reality, what he's doing in the book is he's gathering information on witches so that he could kill them, because they are his sacrifices. They are his targets. So I don't want to give spoilers away for anybody who wants to read the book, but
the Pope. That's the Pope's butcher, right?
That's the Pope's butcher, right? Funny footnote to that story. A couple of years ago, I was in Rome on a totally unrelated business trip. And I brought a copy of the book with me, and I thought it would be kind of cool to take a picture of myself holding it in front of the Vatican, right? In modern times. So I did that. I stood in front of St. Peter's and I held it up, and I was detained by the police. The police,
wow.
the Vatican authorities. Somebody spotted the book and the title, and they grabbed me and they questioned me, and they said, "That's a very violent sounding book. Why would you bring that to the Vatican? Something called
violent sounding.
Who are you? What are you doing with this book? And who are you?" And I explained to them that I'm an author and an American and a lawyer, and they detained me. They ran my passport through whatever, Interpol. They checked me out, and eventually they said, "All right, take that.
Don't come back here.
Don't come back." Yeah, this is not something. And at the time, I found it amusing at first, but then I started thinking about, from their perspective, the church, this isn't really something that they want to
be associated with.
Exactly. It's ancient history for them. Let's move on. But anyway, that's a true story. In any event, so that was my first book, and that brought me to further research about other topics in that vein, which later I wrote a book called Ben's Bones, and that intrigued me because my brothers, I had just been talking to them, and they asked me, they knew about the Pope's Butcher, and they said to me, "Did you happen to see a Smithsonian interview or read in the Smithsonian magazine and see a documentary about how Ben Franklin, when he lived in London, they found all of these bodies in his basement?"
I know about that.
Yes. Yeah, and I knew nothing. This was a few years ago. I knew absolutely nothing about that. Nothing. And so I started reading about it, and I found that it was, in fact, 100% true, that when Ben Franklin was at the time, he was the Pennsylvania diplomat. He wasn't yet on behalf of all the colonies. He was a diplomat from Pennsylvania to the crown, and he was in King George's court in it was like 1760s, late 1760s, before the Revolution. And his wife stayed back in Pennsylvania. She didn't like to travel, and so he lived in this row house, this fairly modest row house on Craven Street in London. So he ended up sort of shacking up there, and he became very friendly with the woman who owned it. Some people think they had an affair, with Ben Franklin, anything's possible. But
Yes.
he later he later on became very friendly, but in a platonic way,
Yeah.
with her daughter Polly. And what's fascinating about Polly, she's a sort of book in her own right, is that Polly ended up coming to the United States and becoming essentially his surrogate daughter. She was with him when he died in Philadelphia much later. And it turns out, as pure coincidence, she's buried not far from where I live in Buck County, Pennsylvania. She's buried in a small churchyard in Bristol, which is, it's just all kind of bizarrely coincidental. But when he lived in London, Polly was his surrogate daughter, and Polly married a man. This is all 100% true. This is all historical fact. She married a man named William Hewson, and Hewson was an interesting guy because he was a surgeon and anatomist at the time who was not licensed. Back then, you had a whole licensing system with barbers and surgeons and these anatomists, and they were operating pretty much under the radar. They weren't sanctioned by any kind of legitimate authority. The government was sort of looking the other way as medicine was starting. And what they would do is they would steal bodies. They would go and they would dig up corpses, freshly buried corpses from churchyards. They would sometimes steal bodies from hospitals at the time, and sometimes, in some rare circumstances, they killed people, and they would kill these people, and they would ferry their bodies off in the middle of the night from the cemetery into their basement, and then they would invite medical students who would pay money to see them do autopsies on these bodies. And
it's giving me Sleepy Hollow vibes.
Yeah, seriously. That's right, exactly. And this guy Hewson was a brilliant anatomist and, early doctor, young doctor. And he was studying under some other surgeons at the time who were doing the same thing. And they were making a lot of money, interestingly, because medical schools didn't really have very good teaching. Their training was pretty limited. They would work on animals, dissect a pig or a dog or something, but then they would have to go and work on people. And so it wasn't really that effective. So what these guys would do is they would charge some money, and these doctors at night, it was literally like in the middle of the night, go and they'd light candles and they would operate on these corpses, dissect them, and then they would learn and they'd become better doctors, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the night, once they're done cutting these bodies up, the guy running the anatomy school has to do something with them, and they can't bring them exactly back outside and put them in the cemetery, right? The body's gone missing from the tomb. And so what this guy Hewson started doing is digging a hole in Ben Franklin's basement and just dumping the bodies in there. And we're talking dozens of bodies, right? Not one or two. We're talking dozens. And maybe,
as if he didn't already have enough to worry about.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. So what you ended up with was this, if you want to call it illegal medical school that was being run in Ben Franklin's basement. And the bodies were piling up right under Ben Franklin's nose while he lived there. Yeah. So in doing my research about this, one of the things that was really fun is I tracked down Dr. Hewson's descendant, who is a doctor who's a doctor in Philadelphia at Children's Hospital, Philadelphia. And she has things that were handed down in her family from Ben Franklin to Polly and Dr. Hewson, which then made their way to Dr. Hewson.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool. And if you go to the Ben Franklin Museum right now in Philadelphia, you can see that a lot of the things that were in there relate to Polly because Polly, the wife of Dr. Hewson, donated them. And so the question I asked Dr. Hewson, Melissa, who's the descendant, was, look, your great-great-great-grandfather lived with Ben Franklin. Your great-great-great-grandmother lived with Ben Franklin. They were doing these things in the basement. Could Ben Franklin not have known? And she said, absolutely not. If you're a doctor today even, and you're operating on corpses in your basement, okay, there's no way Ben Franklin couldn't have known. And
I was going to say, how did he not notice all these bodies piling up in his basement?
Exactly. And this was like a regular thing. It didn't happen once. It happened dozens and dozens of times. So that leads to the real question that I asked, the hypothetical that no one had ever really researched before, is what was Ben Franklin's role in all this? Was he just looking the other way? Yeah, like was he?
Yeah.
Because remember, he was a scientist, he was a
Mhm.
polymath, but he was a shady character. And
Yeah.
so I started digging really deep and found so much fascinating stuff, all true, about how Ben Franklin was involved in secret societies, including the Freemasons. He was the
Yeah.
highest ranking at that time, or one of the highest
Mhm.
ranking. And he was in these lodges with the Houston doctor and some of the other high-ranking doctors at the time. So what I postulated, I mean, we'll never know for sure because it was all in secret societies, but what I postulated was that all of these disputes that were happening about between the doctors and the other surgeons and the body thefts and all the other things going on, including murders, were being resolved hush hush very quietly in the secret Masonic lodges. And there's some evidence to suggest that, for example, I found that there were notes in a mediation between Dr. Hewson and another surgeon who claimed that Dr. Hewson was stealing bodies from him. So they were actually having disputes between the surgeons, the senior surgeons, and that
Quit
surgeon.
stealing my bodies, sir.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then he was arguing that was, a crime. And one of the things they did, again, these sort of very powerful men at the time, is they made it so that, believe it or not, this shocked me, and it's 100% true, that stealing bodies was not a crime at the time.
Oh,
They
wow.
made it so that they said, well, as a public law matter, it's not a theft to steal a body because no one's hurt, right? The person's dead. Their body's not the property of the family anymore. Once they're in the grave, they're, returned to dust, whatever. No, anybody could take them.
Wouldn't they be state property at that point then?
The state didn't care, so maybe the state didn't care. And
well,
in fact,
if they're paying off the state too, and they're in their meetings, so they're like, well, you're giving us money.
They are the state. That's exactly right.
We're just going to look the other way.
If you go to England or Scotland today, you see things called mort safes, which are over some tombs. They put these cages, and they look like they're trying to keep the vampire in the grave. No, that was to keep the
grave robbers out.
That's exactly right. It was a major industry at the time, and they said that it got so bad that what people were doing, I put this all in the book as a story, a narrative. So people were hiring these private detectives, these private constables that would go after them, and they would track them down, and they would basically apprehend them in private justice and then bring them to justice, because that was another thing you could do. But what I just found so fascinating was that guys like John Hunter, who was a major figure to this day in Scotland, a major surgeon, he was at the time a millionaire, and he ran one of these schools in competition with the Hewsons, and he was just not even bothering with waiting until the bodies were in the ground. He would go to the gallows right after hanging at Tyburn.
That one's mine.
Yeah, he would just take them. He would literally just take them, and he would brag about it that he got, I got a dwarf, I got the tallest man, I got twins. So this guy, to this day, they still have a lot of those specimens on display in Scotland in the Hunter Museum. And they were just stolen from and so again, we go back a couple hundred years, and the early parts of medical history are really quite dark and bizarre. And so what I did in that book was I tried to, again, be 100% accurate. I spent all this time going through the annals of the books. I found it also really interesting that Franklin wrote this whole book of letters to Polly, and I just verbatim put them in the book, that he was very close to Polly. And in the end, the tragedy of the story, I won't give away any spoilers because this is the history of it, is that Dr. Hewson succeeds in all of this. And it was a very young man. He won their version of the Nobel Prize in England at like 32 or 33. Really, really successful guy. And Polly was just a wonderful person. And he cut himself while operating on a cadaver and died.
Oh,
and so,
no.
his trajectory ended very quickly. So Ben Franklin took over, as Polly's, caretaker. And as I said, she ended up moving to Pennsylvania from London and becoming his surrogate daughter, basically. But it's just an amazing story, and it's 100% true. And I tried to tell it in a way that made it, fun to read and at the same time, and dramatic, but at the same time, 100% true.
So are these kind of like fictitious nonfiction?
Yeah, so I would describe that as right. I would describe it as historical fiction that I took great care to try to be as accurate as possible about. A lot of historical fiction writers take great liberties and anachronisms and stuff, and maybe it's my background as a lawyer that I tried to be as careful as I could, and maybe to a fault. I at the same time, I think the danger when you're a historical fiction writer is you want it to be at the same time as accurate. You want it to be interesting, and so you have to. You do
so fantastical to a point.
Yeah, to a point. So I hope people like it, but then my third book is very different. My third book, this is kind of, I think, maybe more up the alley of your listeners and viewers. So this book came to me. It's called Salem's Ropes, and this book literally came to me in a dream. Okay, I had a dream. Yeah, and
those are the best kind.
It was amazing, and I had been to this location. You guys probably know it as, it's Allison's house from Hocus Pocus. It's a house in Salem, Massachusetts. Okay, it's called the Ropes Mansion, and the Ropes Mansion is named that because the guy who owned it was the Ropes family. And I had seen this house in the movies. I had seen it in person as a tourist. But I woke up one morning and I had this incredibly vivid dream about that house and the whole narrative, a whole fictional narrative around that house, about its history and about a modern family that moves in and all the experiences they have. And I jumped on my computer. I wrote it down. I said, I got to, and I sent it in an email. I said, I got to have a record of this because it's one of those things where I couldn't have made it up if I tried.
Yeah.
So it was just an interesting story. And again, it was based on some truth about the house, and then the rest of it was fictionalized. And so the book that I eventually wrote, called Salem's Ropes, is almost identical to the dream I had. And it is about again, tied to the historical reality of this house, which as I researched the Ropes Mansion, turns out to be an absolutely fascinating real story. It was a house that was built in 1720, one of the oldest places in Salem that's still around, and people love this house. It's a beautiful white, looks sort of like a White House, but it's really beautiful. And the Ropes Mansion, they don't know exactly what role it played, the property played in the Salem witch trials, but if you go to Salem, if you've been to Salem, it's right where the witch trials were. It's like right near the square there in the middle of Salem, where they have the church and the museum and the statues. It's right there. And as I did the research, I found that this house and garden, which is an extraordinary garden, may have had some connection to Tituba. And Tituba was the slave that was the catalyst. If you watch, for example, the anything modern about that, the Crucible, for example.
Yeah, I was going to say the Crucible.
Crucible, yeah. So she was, in reality, she was the slave, the servant, who allegedly taught witchcraft to the girls. And she got them all excitable, and then the mass hysteria that followed. And Tituba, in, again, real life here, was put on trial and ultimately was put in jail, but was never killed. For whatever reason, the witches that were hanged by the Salem and the others who were crushed by rocks, they were killed. They were locals, right? Tituba was from Barbados, and she was a slave. And one can hypothesize that one of the reasons might have been she was somebody's property, and the way they looked at it was, punishing a person versus killing a slave is like, for their perspective, like killing a horse or something. They didn't think like we do. So anyway, Tituba goes to jail. Someone buys her, pays her bail, and she disappears. We know nothing more about her in the history books. So I wrote about was, what if she had some connection to this house and this garden, and because we don't know. And so the story follows a modern family who buy the house. Now, the house currently, in reality, is a museum, and you can go on tours, public tours during the weekend. I encourage people to see it because it is haunted. I believe it is reportedly haunted, and it's reportedly been haunted. I thought this was interesting. People wrote about hauntings they experienced in the house 200 years ago. So, in other words, it's not like only modern people are saying, "Oh, it's haunted." People in the Victorian era were complaining about the ghosts from the 1700s. So there's something about that house, and if you go into it, you'll see what I mean. It's got a certain vibe about it, and its location is just extraordinary in the middle of Salem. But that Salem's Ropes is about the story of that house and how it has played a role throughout the centuries, again, based on truth, of some really inexplicable deaths. For example, one of the Rope sisters who lived in it in the Victorian era caught fire. Her dress caught fire and she burned to death. And you can go there and see the scorch marks are still in the wood and in front of the fireplace where she died.
Goodness.
Extraordinary. And people claim to this day that they see her walking in the garden, and people will say to the docents, the volunteers, why is someone dressed up like that? Or is it a reenactment or something? And they say there's nobody dressed like anything. And so people have reported that. And throughout the years, there have been also the Ropes family experienced inexplicable tragedies as well. Not just her burning to death, but inexplicable deaths that didn't even occur on the property. Things that occurred nearby, people getting stampeded by a horse, really weird deaths, suicides, people going off to war and being killed at war, and their spirits being seen later on the streets of Salem, walking around. Really creepy stories. So the Ropes Mansion factors in the book, but again, like my other books, I tried to weave as much historical fact as I could into it. And so that it's funny, of my books, that one is probably the most popular because, well, for one, people can go to the place in Salem and see it and recount the history, but also because it's sort of a fascinating mix of history and a modern ghost story, a modern haunted house.
Yeah.
And one you can visit, and actually see.
Well, and if you were a big fan, of Hocus Pocus as well, it adds another little.
Yeah.
They do every year. The owners, the Peabody Essex Museum, who owns the house, they do a beautiful decoration to reenact Hocus Pocus, and they put out the pumpkins and the lights and everything. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I think they're filming something new, a new Hocus Pocus or something.
Yeah, there is a new one.
Yeah. In fact, I had a screenwriter take that book and try to adapt it to a series to make on Netflix, and so we're sort of hoping that goes somewhere. I took to Mike Flanagan about it. It sort of fits well into that genre, like Haunting.
That's awesome.
House. Yeah, we'll see where it goes anywhere, but it's it's got all of the elements in it that hopefully people will find interesting.
I hope
but
so.
that was the most fun to write, interestingly, because the other ones were so much research and so heavy. But like I said, Salem's Ropes came to me literally in a dream, and I was able to just sit down and tell the story, and it's never happened to me before.
Those are the best kind of stories to write, are the ones that come to you like that.
Yeah. And so my background in the priesthood and starting to be a priest, and my interest in the paranormal and the occult and all of that stuff kind of fit well into these together. And so to this day, I love to read about people's true experiences and hear them. And one thing that Glenn had mentioned is you like to know about people's firsthand paranormal experiences, right? And I had one that I mentioned that I would say that, let me say this, paranormal experiences, for those of us who have had what we believe to be the real genuine experience, are not always fun, or living in a haunted house can be very traumatic. It can take a real toll on people. It is not for the light of heart. The movies are one thing, and you watch the movie, and when the movie's over, you can turn it off, right? When the show's over, you turn it off. and you go back to your house and you can worry about, feeding the cat and getting the kids off to school. But people who have ongoing experiences with the paranormal will tell you that things can feel very wrong, and it can really affect your mental health and your physical health. And experiencing these things firsthand is not, once the novelty wears off, like the first time, wow, that's a ghost, you start feeling really uncomfortable and wish it would just go away, and you wish you could turn the television off. And
it's saying annoying to a point too, if you're just like, come on, this has been the sixth time this week, come on.
Yeah. Well, so what the experience I had was much more intense than that, though, and thankfully it wasn't something like it where I live. But I had gone to an investigation, a paranormal investigation, at a place where this store, it's actually a real store that buys and sells haunted and cursed objects. And it's in New Hope, Pennsylvania. If anybody ever gets a chance to visit, it's called the Creeper Gallery. Absolutely fascinating place. And it's been investigated a million times. And what they do at the Creeper Gallery is they collect items that range from real human skeletons and things like that to objects that are supposedly cursed to murder weapons, things that people have worn when they were killed, dark stuff.
I'm gonna say, are we talking like Ed and Lorraine Warren museum kind of thing?
Precisely. And in fact, I think one of the items they had, or two of the items they had, came from Ed and Lorraine's museum. It was something that was used by Ed and Lorraine in an exorcism. So yeah, it's exactly like that. But the items are for sale, which is really interesting. So you can walk in, and theoretically, if you wanted, you could take a Dybbuk box home with you, or
no.
People do. I saw a guy walk in. It's fascinating. Yeah, this guy walked in, and he was a young computer programmer from Philadelphia, and he well dressed, a lot of money, beautiful car, walks in, drops down a lot of money, and walks out with a cursed item. And I said to him, why?
You are nuts.
And he said, I'm bringing it back to my apartment, and I have several other objects too, and I like to have the energy swirling around me, and I like the fact that they interact.
Are you a psycho?
Scary. No.
I was blown away.
I watched a lot of stuff on especially when it comes to like the Dybbuk boxes. I'm like, no, that's something I will not go within any radius of. That scares the crap out of me. Yeah,
it kind of blew my mind. And I had been in the store a few times and always felt vibes from the stuff, and you can't not feel it,
That just seems extremely reckless, though, to just be selling somebody and potentially.
It does.
Well, Donna, who owns the store, she is a very strong woman, and her view of it is she's very transparent and candid with people about what it is they're getting. Right? No one's getting anything by mistake.
Yeah.
So you go there with sort of
knowing what you're getting,
and knowing what you want, and you're paying a lot of money for it, and all the warnings and comes with it, and it's like, you take this, it's yours, you own it. Okay,
I'd be like,
we're not taking it back.
Here's the waiver, you're signing it.
Pretty much, and these
what you're potentially getting yourself into.
And some of these collectors, most of the collectors are return customers. They buy the stuff and they take it home, and then they want more. Look, I don't judge, what people do, but let me say this: during the paranormal investigation, which is the only one I've ever really seen firsthand, except on TV, they had some really interesting paraphernalia set up. They had this computer, a laptop that had a camera, and what it does is it tracks if there's a human figure in the image. Have you seen this? I don't know exactly what it's called. Yeah, and so it looks for like
it ends up looking like a stick figure with the little dots and
exactly. I don't know what it's called, but it shows like a stick figure with like, it looks for the head and the arms, and if anything matches what looks like a human figure, it tracks that and maps it, and then it'll just disappear or whatever if nothing's there. So they put that on, and they had the usual equipment set up with recorders and video cameras and everything. And they also put these lights that are like balls that if a cat hits them, they light
balls.
up.
Yeah.
Cat balls, yeah. Cat balls. And they also have, in addition to all of that, they have like Christmas lights, like on Stranger Things, right? The Christmas lights they set up. And they communicate with these spirits or whatever they are. And, you know, I didn't know what to expect, but this stuff started coming through it. They started touching things, blinking things.
It's an SLS camera.
Is that what it's called?
That's it. Right. Yeah.
And it started showing on this screen, this camera, it started showing that some kind of figure was coming in and out of the frame, and it was palpable. Like you really could feel that something was going on there, and it got weird. And this is where I made a mistake. I started saying, hey, can I interact with it directly?
Yeah.
And because I was sort of skeptical, I wasn't really sure. So they said, sure.
Right.
So I did, and I started invoking some of the Latin prayers I knew from studying to be a priest, including an exorcist prayer. Well, needless to say, first of all, I saw something there that I can't really describe very well, but it was, I guess I would describe it as if you were in a dark room, it was blacker than the dark room. It was like the blackest ink. And the physics of it, I can't really understand how black can be darker than black. How it can be like a void or something that's like, right?
Exactly. It's a void.
The void, yeah. It's like sucking energy into somewhere else. And at the same time, it had this, how do I describe it? It had an intent to it, right? It wasn't just a shape or something. And the intent was the worst kind of intent you could possibly imagine. Just pure dread and hatred and animosity and cruelty and antipathy that without conscience or anything. Just something or someone who just
a big ball of angry, mad, and hate.
Ball of everything bad in one place, devoid of anything positive, if you can imagine that kind of thing. And I was, I don't know what it was. So it wasn't, I wasn't imagining it. I don't believe I was. I really don't.
No.
It's the only thing I've ever experienced like it then or since then. And, you know, the paranormal researchers and the other people were like, oh, yeah, we kind of experienced those things all the time.
Yeah.
This is like for them, like, oh, that's old news. For me,
well, that's just a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then the worst part of it, I won't get into detail, but when I came home, very, 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 very bad things followed me.
Yeah.
And into my personal life, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Didn't close the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you have to somehow,
like before you leave, you have to. It's like
to make sure that it does not follow you. You have to make it not follow you.
You know, but I guess from my perspective at the time, you know, despite the fact that I studied to be a priest, and despite the fact I, you know about this stuff intellectually, like anybody else, you know, you watch movies or read a book, but it's very, very different to experience it firsthand. And it is not something I would, not only would I never go near it again, I wouldn't even go down that street again. I won't even cross that street because it affected me that much. And I think people really, people who've had firsthand experiences, whatever it is, I don't know, but you know, if it's otherworldly, supernatural, paranormal, whatever label you want to put on it, but it is so profound an experience that it can affect you on a deep level that's emotional and very visceral. And I can't explain it. I don't think I imagined it. I really don't. But I would never go near it again. And I now think about the implications of what that means. If in fact it was real, or as real as you and me, and as real as tangible as anything, that means that all this stuff may be real. Does that make sense? Like once you sort of intellectually turn the lock and say, okay, maybe there is something to this.
It's very scary.
Yeah, it sort of really opens up the reality, as you say, intellectually. Okay, how do I process this? How do I put this in put it in a box?
Yeah, because you almost can't.
Well,
no, you can't. You can't.
To understand that type of entity is loose in the world, and that people do come in contact with it, and it can be invoked, or that people can run into it and don't push it away. I think a lot of times, I think a lot of it is happening.
I would imagine too. I mean, obviously, I have nothing to compare it to, but feeling that level of hate that you've never felt before, and like that's something you physically felt, and I think there's a lot that comes along with, like, you being able to say there's that kind of hate out there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what a psychologist or scientist would probably say is they would say that if the human mind can project that you can imagine it, that doesn't mean it's real, quote unquote, as much as you are projecting it. But I think that I'm reasonably intelligent enough to know the difference between imagining something and perceiving something, right?
Wanting to imagine that kind of hate and disgust, and
it's a feeling.
Feel it.
It's not.
You don't know. That's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was saying this is you had an actual entity in front of you. It was not your imagination, correct?
Yeah. So one of the things I read was Aleister Crowley, the famous bad boy.
Sex magic.
Sex magic. Yeah, the bad guy. He once was asked if these entities are quote unquote real, and he said, sort of everything is real, regardless of whether or not you want to call it an entity or imaginary. Does it really make a difference?
It
because
does.
Because from a perception standpoint, if something is in front of you, if you believe it is real for you, and therefore using these labels like entity or intelligence or whatever is a little bit misleading, because it doesn't really matter.
No, it isn't.
It's hard to understand that,
He's
It's
a
hard to
very.
understand.
He's a.
And I think too, was kind of the point I was trying to make of, like, if you've never, experienced, that before, I don't think that you can just be pulling that out of nowhere.
Right.
No,
I don't know.
I knew exactly what he was talking about when he said it. I've experienced it. So yeah, I know exactly. As soon as he started talking about it, I said, yep, been there, done that. Yeah.
Yeah, people who've had these genuine experiences, sincere experiences, can identify with it. They can also explain and identify to you that it lingers with you long after. It is not like the TV show where you turn it off and put it out of your head and go back to feeding the cat, right? This stuff is like, whatever you want to call it, a religious experience or whatever. I think people who claim to have experienced alien abductions have described it to that. It's life-changing. It can really alter your fundamental perception of reality in a way, because you do start to say, okay, if this
is real, what else is real?
What else is real? And is everything real? And if everything is real, that's a very scary thought, because we like to live in a comfortable world, right? We like to think that there's what we can see around us, but whatever the heck that was, I don't know. But it makes the scary stories you tell in the dark a lot more scary when you think about it.
That's true.
Right? Like when you're a kid and your parents say, this stuff isn't real, don't let it scare you. And then you get up and say,
then you're like, oh.
Y'all lied.
Maybe some of it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That feeling that you talk about, there's no real words to describe it. I tell a story about through a series of weird events, ended up at a house I grew up in that was for sale. And I called my mom on the phone and said, I think this was one of the houses. I knew it was haunted as a child, but I never put two and two together. And I thought, well, it's for sale. I'm just going to go walk around the property, look in the windows and stuff. I couldn't see through the windows. It was blacker than black. It was as if somebody had spray painted rubber on the inside of the window. I got this intense feeling of F you. We don't want you here. Get out of here. We hate you. My whole family could see in there. They could see in the window. I could not. Yeah. It was the strangest event that I won't say that of my entire life, but pretty dang close. But that feeling, and my son, I remember he found like a little toy soldier that he said, "Oh, well, maybe you played with this as a child and bring it home." And I'm like, "Oh, you leave that right.
You put it down."
Matter of fact, we're gonna go home and strip naked and burn the clothes.
Yeah.
But
Lynn,
yeah, it's a feel.
I apologize. Is that the place where your grandfather passed away? Okay.
No, it was a different house.
Okay.
So, like he said, I think it follows you.
Mhm.
Whether it chooses to leave you, you choose to leave it. You close the door. I don't know. I wasn't. My family found religion, albeit a different type of religion at that time, and they helped things ease up. But did they ever, even to this point in my life? I mean, I'm 55 and I still sometimes out of the corner of my eye, there's something there. Is it really there, or is it just yeah. And that's one of the reasons I like discussing this stuff with people, because everybody has a different experience on it, and everybody can give you different value to it. Like, you give me some information to think about with past experiences that.
Well, I think we all need a little bit of that validation too, of that, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then people that ask it, "Oh, can you turn on a light?" Leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's not a cat ball. Yeah. I think there's a lot of scary, spooky things in this world. I think there's some that are so scary, spooky that they can either kill you or cause you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
That reminds me of you just reminded me of an experience. It wasn't really an experience much as a story that I would mention. So I was when I was growing up in New York City, I grew up in a small apartment in Queens, very small, and I was in this tiny little room that was like almost as frankly a storage closet I grew up in, and my parents sort of gave that to me so that at least I had some privacy. But I absolutely despised this room. Absolutely hated it. It just felt so stiflingly dark and depressing that I hated it, and I couldn't wait. Like, I was so excited when we moved out of that house and of that apartment. Anyway, years later, more recently, like about 10 years ago, I was in the neighborhood. I hadn't been back in many, many years, and I walked up, and I couldn't believe it, but this older woman who had been my neighbor growing up was there, an elderly woman. I said to her, I used to live here, and she said, "I knew your parents way back when. I remember when you were born." I said, "You're kidding me." She said, No. I remember your parents, and they got married. I remember when you moved in, and I remember when you moved out. And I said, "Oh my God, I remember living in, growing up in that little tiny room. I hated that room." And she said, a few years ago, there was a death in that room from an overdose, and it was really horrible that they couldn't find the kid. It was a teenager. They couldn't find him, and he ended up overdosing in that room, and they found him later. And it sort of came back to me so hard, and I was like, oh my God. So in this weird time loop, I had been in this room as a child for several years and hated it, and it was a dark and foreboding place. I move out. Decades later, somebody moves in, and their kid kills himself in that room. I don't know. Just kind of a chilling thought. But when she told me, I was horrified that the family suffered that loss. But yet, in that room, I'm not surprised. It was just such a horrible place. And now someone lives in it now, I presume. I mean, that was 10 years ago. So these things happen in a time and space, and then it's just hard to think about.
Yeah,
you know?
it's odd how some rooms will hold that. I mean, like have that sort of depressing type oppressive
Sometimes
feeling.
it can just get to people.
Yeah.
So then I guess I asked the question, was the room itself, because of, non-paranormal reasons, maybe the room itself was just a very depressing place, and I felt it because it was a depressing place, and he felt it because it was a depressing place, and he just couldn't handle it. But there was more to it. It's hard to explain, but when I was growing up there, it was more than just a dreary room, because it just was a room. But there was something in it that was just very dark. And I sometimes wonder, again, going back to this reality that we don't understand, is there more to it than we can perceive? Is there something else going on beyond our senses that we can't intellectually explain? Is there something living in that room, feeding off of people's energy, maybe, or causing bad things to happen because it somehow benefits from that? I don't know. I don't understand it any more than anyone else, but we don't know. That's my point. Is we don't know, and that's kind of the scariest part.
And to a point, it's almost like we would be a little better off not knowing.
Yeah. Well, maybe, yeah. To a point, yeah. Yeah, who would? Yeah, right. You're right.
Once you know, though, you know.
Like Will said, once you've seen something, you're marked. So, my fans are all going to ask: have you ever seen a Bigfoot or had any experiences with anything outdoors?
Dang it!
I don't spend enough time outdoors, unfortunately. But I would say the one thing that resonated with me, and I absolutely believe there's that exists as an entity. I think it's interdimensional as well, of some sort. And I think there are species that have probably pre-existed humanity for a very long time. We think we're they're the aliens, and I think maybe we are. But with Bigfoot, the one thing that resonated with me is many people who've seen it very credibly talk about how they felt that feeling of dread as well, and that it sometimes feels otherworldly, and that there's a sense of foreboding that's otherworldly. And I just wonder about that feeling like you're prey and being stalked, if that's something in common between the paranormal experiences of these, whatever these things are, parasitic entities, interdimensional entities or something, and us feeling like we're being stalked as prey. I just wonder if there isn't something in common there. We're not always the highest entity on the food chain, I think.
Right.
We just like to think we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a great question. Yeah.
That is.
It makes you think. I mean, because not all Bigfoot encounters are friendly. They're not, the cuddly little bears that you see on the cartoon shows. So, and then there's even been descriptions of different types, Dogman, Bigfoot, ape-like, what's real, what's not,
Yeti.
Yeah. There could be different breeds, maybe.
It's almost like there would be different breeds, like different breeds of bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try to think about it from an intellectual standpoint. If these are very possibly entities that evolved the same way that everything evolved throughout history, then they probably could have evolved independent branches, right? So, like a Yeti, if that were related to this kind of entity, would be white fur, because it would have to blend into the surroundings of Nepal or Tibet or wherever they're seen. But a Bigfoot or Sasquatch in North America would probably be darker. That might help explain some of the differences. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, trying to think about this stuff scientifically, it's impossible, but I don't know.
That's why I was relating it to bears, because you've got like you've got like polar bears.
Right. Yeah.
My favorite, panda bear.
Panda bear.
I want to see a panda Yeti then.
Yeah, Joe. I've got another guest that frequents the show. He's also an attorney, lives right down the street from you. I would love to get the two of you on the show together and just kind of go back and forth, because you and him think the same way about a lot of things. And
You'd really like him.
Yeah.
I'd be delighted. Anytime, I'd be flattered.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I'm putting Shay on that. Shay, and I know Jeff's watching, so
Yeah.
Well, so now we have a paranormal attorney. So now what is
paranormal psychologist too? So
Yeah.
okay?
I have another one with Macy. I may have like backups. I may have like
Yeah.
backup psychologist, backup paranormal attorney. I mean, who knows?
The one thing I would say as a serious matter is that I'm really glad that in recent years there's been more open-minded conversations about these things among people who are not, who in the past would have not been comfortable addressing more open-minded questions, right?
Yeah.
Attorneys or scientists. And I think that
definitely agree.
Yeah, I think things are changing where people who are so-called educated are a little bit maybe more open, and there's not the stigma that there used to be as much. I was just watching a show about that the other day, and they were saying, people who years ago saw UFOs and reported them were pretty much written off as crazy.
Yeah,
And now you have, it's more open, conversation where people can report it, and scientists, even mainstream scientists, will say, maybe.
Well, and they're not just a bunch of crazies.
Yeah.
Joe, before we get out of here, let's tell everybody where they can find your stuff, because I'm sure after this, your book sales are going to skyrocket. So
I already got the Pope's Butcher on Audible and have the other two in my cart. So
thank you. Yeah,
thank you for having
everybody
stuff on Audible.
Yeah, I steer everybody to Amazon. I think
Yeah.
most things, if not all, are on Audible as well. Yeah, I don't remember if we did Ben's Bones on Audible, but
Ben's Bones isn't, but
Salem's Ropes
is.
and Post Butcher, and Post Butcher is also
though.
Spanish translation. Yeah, but I steer everybody to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Those are the two best places to get these things.
They're in my cart.
Great, thank you, and I hope you enjoy them. And
I'm excited.
Thanks for having me.
I'm hoping I can still get a copy from you signed. So.
Oh yeah, no, I had that. I actually had that on my to-do list. I've been
I'll get mine and then I'll just ship them to you to sign.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm getting more of a collection of books now than I had. I swore when I got out of college I was never reading.
You don't read.
Kidding. Kindle, Kindle's great too. The Kindle.
I was kidding him. Yeah, I like Kindle too.
Kindle's great. Yeah.
Well, then I don't know. We don't have time, Joe. But I was going to ask about your favorite comic books too. But we'll have to.
Hey, we're gonna have a red table talk with our paranormal attorneys. So
yeah,
we did a show with him actually. What if you killed Bigfoot? And everybody loved it because the legalities of stuff. Yeah, so
that's a good one.
Right, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Thank you for all of your time. I will message you soon. I'll have Shay.
I'll be in contact too.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have Shay schedule. So
thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
All right.
I like him. He's cool.
I did too.
Great ladies.
It was a very good show.
It was.
We learned about disc golf. We talked paranormal. We talked a little psychology.
Little Catholic deep state going on.
Yeah, I wanted to go so much more. But I was sitting here looking at the clock on the timer, going.
I know. I was just like, no, I better not say anything.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Put together so we know when time is, because the one up here, 2 hours 3 minutes is what we've been running, but minutes for when I edit this for WDBY and WFRN.
Yeah.
Or is it RFN? WRFN. Yeah, WRFN. Gotta learn this stuff.
It's like I'll just have to write down my questions for.
Think of warfarin. Warfarin.
Well, it's Radio Free Nashville. So it is on KUVO in Denver. So we're out there, we're growing. But I would like to get them, and Shay, I will task you with getting the
1,000%.
And I know for a fact that Jeff would love that. I'm surprised. I've probably got a message in my inbox. He was on call if we needed him tonight.
Bless his heart.
He's so fun.
He's the best.
Get him on the show and get Trey in here too. So Trey, the paranormal psychologist, and maybe even reach out to Macy and see that she's getting out of the military. She might be able to talk. She might be able to talk. She's probably still under that 5 year. They keep them in 5 years.
You'll have to send me Trey's info, and I'll just corral everybody in for big 2-hour show. It'll be our paranormal red table talk.
Well, yeah, and we can do that. Actually, that wouldn't be that hard. All we just have to do is just split it at the 58-minute and welcome everybody back to part 2, like we did the Misfits.
Yep.
So yeah, we can do that. And the chat was pretty good. People were fighting in the chat. I like that.
Thanks, Brenda.
I don't know why they were fighting. They were fighting. So
because she wasn't wearing pants, I believe.
It was just warning Brenda.
Brenda never wears pants. What are you talking about? So
thanks, Brenda.
Yes, we're glad you're here, Brenda. It was a good show. Thank you. You can find us on Yerg's Radio. We're having to upload our most recent episode, so we're on top of that. You can find us on yergsradio.com on replay through the week. And we are also on Radio Fairfax audio, both in the morning and in the afternoon on the drives on Wednesdays and Fridays, I think it is. And now we're in New Mexico. Don't ask. It's an undisclosed location that I don't even understand yet. No, it's like well, it could be. We're also.
I'm gonna tell myself it is.
Yeah, well, it's in the same state, so it's close enough for me. Yeah, we're in San Diego, Denver, Breckenridge, Colorado Springs. We're there too. So
we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Maybe we will even get into. I'm talking to a station in Kentucky. I want to get into Kentucky for no apparent reason. So
they'll like it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We'll leave it at that. Ladies, you got anything going on?
See me back here Saturday.
Yes.
I can do. Hold on. Yeah. Who's? Hold on. I can't do this before we leave because, well, it wouldn't be a Sportcat show unless I hit a button. And
ladies and gentlemen, from coast to coast and around the world, you're listening to the Sportcat show.
That's right, from coast to coast and around the world, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Rocket.
That's right. That's my good buddy Rocket. Who do we have lined up next week? We have. Let's see. We have George Miller and we have Jolly Roger. 2 different authors with 2 different styles of books, and I think my guests will really enjoy, or my fans. Wrong button. Where'd I go? Will really enjoy them. So looking forward to that. Saturday on the Misfits, of course. 2 hours of fun. We're joined again. Well, I think Luke hasn't confirmed yet, but I think Luke's going to be with us for the first hour, and then second hour will just be the normal gang hanging out, having a nice cold beverage. And then Friday night, I forgot the Grin and Guardian show. We have Mark Hill. If you remember Mark, we interviewed him in Ode to Dark 30 about what happens in the middle of the night on fire EMS calls. There's even some magical mystery stuff to that too, which is kind of amazing. So we have him on the Grin and Guardian show talking challenge queens, public safety. And I forgot to mention this earlier when we had a full house, but this is our 50th episode. This and post when I and got out of the mental ward. So this is my 50th. I did it. I made it.
Woo! Celebration.
Make it with us to episode 100 and we'll all go.
That's right. If you have any confetti or anything, you can toss on the screen.
Where's our air horns? Bow, bow, bow.
I don't know how to do a.
Oh my God.
There you go.
Close enough.
Sunday, live from the psych ward.
It was like in the middle of the night when I was putting the show together, and I'm like, wait a minute. Because I keep, season 1 episode, because this season, I'm counting this as season 2 since it started at the beginning of the year. And I started season 1 at the end of where I left off with that other incident. And so I was ready to move on. So I didn't count that. So
Yep.
I got it.
I'm echoing now.
You are. I'm
Love
going to be
it.
on a radio station in Kentucky because I can. All right, ladies and germs, I appreciate you. Actually, Ross is looking at a station in New York and Milwaukee. My agent was talking about one in Detroit and Boston.
Detroit, Boston.
I don't think you're going to understand me. Y'all have enough problem with me. Yahoo.
Yeah. Yahoo.
Boss is going to understand what I'm saying.
Yahoo!
They won't understand me.
They will just laugh at us. It's okay.
That's true. Well, you know, when I did fly all the time when we would go up north, the nurses would say, just talk to me, say something.
Yeah, say something in Southern.
What the hell y'all want?
Hi.
Oh, bless your heart.
There you go.
Honey.
How about this? We'll see y'all later, and I love y'all as my audience. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll see